The crystalline spires of New Geneva's most exclusive wedding venue gleamed against the amber sky of Kepler 442b, their surfaces reflecting the twin suns that painted everything in ethereal gold. Inside the astral pavilion, humanity's elite gathered to witness the union of Draxion Vex, CEO of Stellar Dynamics Corporation, and Valara Nyx, heiress to the Nyx mining fortune. The air hummed with anti-grav chandeliers and the soft melody of quantum harps. Draxion stood at the altar, his cybernetic implants barely visible beneath his perfectly tailored ceremonial robes. At 42, he commanded the largest terraforming empire in known space, responsible for making dozens of worlds habitable for human expansion. His bride approached down the aisle of floating petals, her dress shimmering with nanotechnology that shifted colors like liquid starlight. The officiant raised his hands to begin the ceremony when the massive doors burst open. Security drones whirred to life but froze mid-flight as their systems were overridden by an unknown signal. A young girl, no more than 16, strode into the hall. Her appearance was striking. Silver hair that seemed to move with its own current, eyes that flickered between human brown and something altogether more alien. She wore simple clothes, but they couldn't hide the subtle luminescence of her skin under the ceremonial lighting. "Stop this ceremony," she declared, her voice carrying with unnatural resonance that made the quantum crystals in the chandeliers sing. "This man is not who you think he is." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Draxion's face darkened, his hand instinctively moving to the neural disruptor concealed in his jacket. "Security, remove this child immediately." But the girl raised her hand and every piece of technology in the room flickered. Holoscreens, atmospheric processors, even the guest's neural implants sparked briefly before stabilizing. "My name is Lyrelei Quantumborn," she announced, her eyes now fully silver and swirling with inner light. "And I am your daughter, Draxion Vex. The daughter you abandoned when you discovered I wasn't entirely human." The wedding hall erupted in chaos. Guests backed away from the girl, some reaching for weapons, others for communication devices that no longer functioned properly. Valara stumbled backward, her perfect composure cracking. Draxion's face went pale. Impossible. Kythera died in the Vega system collapse 15 years ago, along with any child. "My mother didn't die," Lyrelei said, stepping closer. "She escaped to the drift, the space between dimensions where the quantum storms birth new realities. She raised me there, taught me to control what I am, what we are." She gestured, and the air around her shimmered, revealing glimpses of impossible geometries and swirling energy that made several guests stumble with vertigo. "The Stellar Dynamics Corporation isn't just terraforming worlds," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "You're preparing them for something else, something that's coming from beyond our galaxy, and you've been working with them all along." Draxion finally found his voice cold and commanding. "You're delusional, child, the product of isolation and whatever exotic radiation exposure." "I can prove it," Lyrelei interrupted. She touched the nearest wall, and suddenly the elegant decorations flickered, revealing the truth beneath. Walls lined with quantum computers processing incomprehensible alien data streams, and hidden chambers containing technology that definitely wasn't human in origin. The wedding guests screamed as the illusion fell away completely, showing them they weren't in a wedding venue at all, but in the heart of a massive xenoarchaeological facility buried deep beneath New Geneva's surface. The transformation of the wedding venue sent shockwaves through the assembled elite. Ambassador Corvain Helix, representative of the Colonial Senate, stumbled backward as alien hieroglyphs writhed across surfaces that moments before had been decorated with human art. Corporate mogul Zafira Void grabbed her quantum-encrypted communicator, only to find it displaying readings in a language that hurt to look at directly. "This is impossible," Valara whispered, her designer gown now looking absurdly out of place against the backdrop of pulsing xenotech conduits. "Draxion, what is this place?" But Draxion had regained his composure with disturbing speed. His hand moved to a concealed neural interface, and suddenly armed security personnel materialized through previously invisible doorways. Humans, but wrong somehow, their movements too fluid, their eyes reflecting light like mirrors. Lyra, he said, his voice now carrying harmonics that no human throat should produce. You shouldn't have come here. You shouldn't have developed so quickly. The girl, no, Lyra realized she needed to stop thinking of herself as just a girl, straightened to her full height. The quantum energy around her intensified and several of the alien systems in the walls responded, glowing brighter. 15 years ago, you made contact with the Harvester fleet while surveying the Vega system, she said, her voice cutting through the panic of the wedding guests. They offered you a deal, prepare human worlds for integration, and you'd be spared when they arrived. But they needed something from you first. A hybrid. A bridge between human consciousness and their quantum collective. She gestured to herself, and the air around her hand briefly tore open, revealing glimpses of a vast fleet moving through space that seemed to bend reality around their ships. You seduced my mother, Dr. Kithara Nebulos, the foremost expert in quantum biology. But when I was born showing abilities neither fully human nor fully harvester, you panicked. You tried to eliminate us both. Draxian's enhanced soldiers moved to surround Lyra, but she merely looked at them. Their cybernetic implants sparked and failed, leaving them stumbling and disoriented. The quantum storms in the drift didn't just hide us, she continued. They accelerated my development. I've spent 15 years learning to navigate realities that exist between dimensions, mastering abilities that your harvester allies never expected a hybrid to develop independently. Ambassador Helix, his political instincts finally overriding his shock, stepped forward. Are you saying that the terraforming program, the expansion that's brought prosperity to humanity, has all been preparation for an invasion? Not invasion, Lyra corrected. Integration. The harvesters don't destroy civilizations. They absorb them, adding their biological and technological distinctiveness to their collective. Every world's stellar dynamics has terraformed includes quantum resonance, nodes buried in the planet's core. When the fleet arrives, they'll activate simultaneously, creating a galaxy-spanning network that will merge human consciousness with the Harvester collective. The horrifying implications crashed over the assembled crowd like a wave. Zephyra Void's face went ashen as she realized her own mining operations had likely been shipping the necessary materials for years. Draxion laughed, a sound that contained too many overtones. Clever girl. Yes, it's all true, but you're too late. The final preparations are complete. The Harvester fleet will arrive within days, and humanity will take its place in something far greater than our limited individual existence. That's where you're wrong, Lyra said. She raised both hands and reality around her began to fracture, showing brief glimpses of infinite possibilities. The quantum storms taught me something the Harvesters never learned. There's power in chaos in the spaces between order, in being truly free. She smiled, and for the first time, it looked genuinely happy rather than determined. And I brought friends. The air in the facility began to vibrate with increasing intensity. Reality wavered like heat distortion, and through the cracks stepped figures that defied easy description. They shared Lyra's silver-touched features, but each was unique. Some flickered between visible and invisible. Others seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and a few appeared to be composed of living starlight. The Driftborn, Lyra announced, as her companions arranged themselves around the room. Others like me, children of humans who escaped to the spaces between realities. We've been watching, learning, preparing. Draxian's enhanced soldiers raised weapons that hummed with exotic energy, but the Driftborn simply phased through the attacks, their forms becoming temporarily incorporeal. One of them, a young man whose skin seemed to contain swirling galaxies, stepped forward. I am Nexus Voidwalker, he said, his voice echoing from multiple dimensions. Son of Captain Ryan Cross, who disappeared during the Andromeda deep space mission 12 years ago. The Harvesters took our ship, but my mother's love for humanity helped her resist the integration process long enough to escape to the drift. Another stepped forward, a woman whose hair moved like solar flares. Vela Stormheart, daughter of Admiral Zara Blackstar. The Harvesters have been testing their integration process on captured humans for decades. Those who resist successfully are cast into the drift, where we've been building our strength. Ambassador Helix, his political mind racing despite the impossible circumstances, grasped the implications. How many of you are there? Thousands, Lyralai replied. Every lost exploration ship, every failed deep space mission that never returned, many of them found their way to us. The drift exists parallel to normal space, and we've learned to use it as our base of operations. Draxion snarled, his human facade finally cracking completely. His skin began to shimmer with the same mirror-like quality as his soldiers, and when he spoke, multiple voices emerged from his throat. You understand nothing, hybrid spawn. The harvesters offer transcendence. Individual consciousness is limited, flawed, prone to conflict and suffering. The collective consciousness provides peace, unity, perfection. Perfection is death. Lyralai shot back. The harvesters consume everything that makes a species unique, leaving only their own vision of order. Look around you. This facility is processing terabytes of data about human culture, art, individual personalities. They're cataloging us like specimens before they erase who we are. She gestured to the alien computers, and suddenly the wedding guests could see what the machines were really doing. Holographic displays showed detailed psychological profiles of billions of humans, their dreams and fears mapped with surgical precision. Art galleries contained not celebrations of human creativity, but analyses of how to most efficiently strip away individual expression. Vilara, who had been silent since the revelation began, suddenly screamed, "My father! The mining operations, we've been providing them with quantum resonance crystals for years. I thought we were building a better future for humanity." Your father was one of the first to be partially integrated, Draxion said with cold satisfaction. His resistance was minimal, very disappointing for someone with such a reputation for independence. The betrayal hit the assembled elite like a physical blow. These were people who had built their identities around human achievement and progress, only to discover they had been unwitting collaborators in their species' planned extinction. But Lyralai wasn't finished. She closed her eyes and extended her consciousness into the quantum realm, feeling for the connections that bound the facility's systems together. The resonance nodes, she said. They're not just communication devices. They're designed to create quantum entanglement between every human mind on every terraformed world. When the harvesters activate them, the shock of sudden collective consciousness will leave most humans catatonic, making the integration process effortless. Precisely, Draxion hissed. Humanity will simply wake up one day as part of something greater. Most won't even realize what they've lost. But quantum entanglement works both ways, Lyralai continued, her eyes snapping open with sudden inspiration. If we can access the network before they activate it, we can use their own system against them. Instead of forcing unity, we can transmit pure chaos, the quantum uncertainty that exists in the drift. Nexus grinned, his galaxy skin swirling with excitement. Immunize humanity against forced integration by exposing them to true quantum freedom. It would be dangerous, Vela warned. Channeling that much chaos through the network could destroy the nodes entirely, leaving many worlds without quantum communication for decades. Lyralai looked around at the terrified wedding guests, then at her driftborn companions, and finally at Draxion's increasingly inhuman features. Freedom is always dangerous, she said. But slavery disguised as transcendence is worse. The facility shuddered as Lyralai and her driftborn allies began their assault on the quantum network. Reality itself seemed to protest as they accessed systems designed to interface with consciousness patterns, far removed from baseline humanity. Draxion's alien hybrid soldiers moved to intercept them, but found their targets existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making conventional attacks impossible. You don't understand the forces you're manipulating, Draxion roared, his form now clearly more harvester than human. His skin had become a living mirror surface, and additional limbs were sprouting from his torso. Elegant, crystalline appendages that moved with insectile precision. The quantum chaos of the drift isn't meant to interact with ordered consciousness. You'll drive every human in the galaxy insane. Lyralai paused in her work at the central console, her hands deep in what appeared to be solid matter but was actually quantum probability made manifest. Maybe, she admitted, but insanity is better than oblivion. At least mad people are still individuals. Around the facility, the wedding guests had formed an unlikely alliance. Ambassador Helix was coordinating with Zephyra Void to access emergency Colonial Senate protocols, while Valara worked frantically to map her family's mining operations, trying to identify which worlds were most vulnerable to immediate harvester activation. 347 worlds, she announced, her voice cracking with the magnitude of the betrayal her family had unknowingly enabled. We've supplied quantum resonance crystals to 347 human colonies. Each crystal is tuned to a specific quantum frequency, Nexus reported from his position at a subsidiary console. The harvesters can activate them in sequence, starting with the most populated worlds. They're planning to begin with Terra Prima, 18 billion people. Fela, her solar flare hair now blazing with intensity, looked up from the alien data streams she was deciphering. The activation sequence begins in 6 hours. They're using our own quantum communication network to coordinate the timing across multiple galaxies. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. For decades, the harvesters had been positioning themselves throughout human space, replacing key individuals with partially integrated hybrids, while systematically preparing every world for assimilation. The terraforming program hadn't been humanity's greatest achievement. It had been their elaborate funeral preparation. There has to be a way to warn the colonies, Ambassador Helix said. But even as he spoke, he knew the hopelessness of the situation. Quantum communication was instantaneous across any distance, but preparing billions of people for what was coming would take weeks. Lyrelai felt the weight of impossible responsibility settling on her shoulders. In the drift, she had learned to navigate probability streams, to see the quantum threads that connected all possible futures. Now, as she reached deeper into the harvester network, she could see the timeline crystallizing. In 6 hours, human individual consciousness would cease to exist, but she could also see something else. The quantum chaos she and her companions carried wasn't just destructive, it was creative. In the spaces between realities, new forms of consciousness evolved constantly, adapted to existing in multiple states simultaneously. We don't need to just immunize humanity, she said, her voice gaining strength as the revelation struck her. We need to evolve them. Draxion, who had been attempting to access hidden command protocols to stop the driftborne interference, froze. What? The harvesters want to absorb human consciousness into their collective. But quantum chaos doesn't destroy consciousness, it multiplies it. Creates new forms of awareness that can't be easily categorized or controlled. She turned to her companions. We're not going to transmit randomness through their network. We're going to transmit potential. The implications were staggering. Instead of simply disrupting the harvester integration process, they were proposing to fundamentally alter human consciousness itself, to give every person in the galaxy the ability to exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously. It's never been attempted on this scale, Nexus warned. The quantum cascade could tear apart the fabric of space-time in inhabited systems. Or it could create something entirely new, Lyrelai countered. Humanity that can't be absorbed because we're no longer limited to single reality existence. Valara, who had been listening with growing horror and fascination, stepped forward. What would we become? Lyrelai smiled, and for a moment her form flickered, showing glimpses of the infinite possibilities she contained. We'd become truly free, conscious beings who exist wherever consciousness is possible, not bound by the limitations of individual biology or collective programming. You're talking about the end of humanity as we know it, Ambassador Helix said quietly. Yes, Lyrelai agreed, but the alternative is the end of humanity as anything at all. The facility groaned around them as the quantum systems strained under the unprecedented load. In 6 hours, 347 worlds would face forced integration into an alien collective consciousness. The only hope for preserving human freedom lay in abandoning human limitations entirely. Do it, Valara said suddenly. My family helped create this situation. Let me help fix it. One by one, the other wedding guests voiced their agreement. They had come to witness a union, but instead would participate in the transformation of their entire species. The transformation began with a sound that existed beyond hearing, a harmonic resonance that vibrated through quantum fields rather than air. Lyrelay stood at the center of the facility's control matrix, her body now clearly more energy than matter, streams of probability cascading around her like liquid starlight. Her drift-born companions had linked their consciousness with hers, creating a quantum collective that operated on principles of freedom rather than control. "The harvesters are detecting our interference," Vela reported, her solar flare hair now forming actual coronas of fusion fire above her head. "They're accelerating their timeline. First activation in 20 minutes. "Then we go now," Lyrelay declared. She reached into the quantum network, feeling her consciousness expand across impossible distances. Through the resonance crystals buried, in 347 worlds, she could sense the sleeping potential of billions of human minds. The first world she touched was Terra Prima, humanity's crown jewel. 18 billion people going about their daily lives, unaware that their individuality was about to be stripped away. As she made contact with the planet's quantum resonance network, she felt the harvester programming already beginning to activate, tendrils of alien consciousness probing at the edges of human awareness. "They're starting the integration," Nexus shouted, his galaxy skin now pulsing with urgent light. "I can feel them beginning to establish quantum links with the population centers." But Lyrelay was ready. Instead of trying to block the harvester programming, she embraced it, allowing the alien quantum patterns to flow through her, and then introducing chaos at the fundamental level. Where the harvesters sought to impose unity, she injected infinite possibility. On Terra Prima, the first humans to be touched by the cascade didn't lose their individuality. They multiplied it. Dr. Corwin Nexus, a quantum physicist in New Geneva, suddenly found himself existing simultaneously in his laboratory, in 17 different theoretical realities where his experiments had produced different results, and in the pure mathematical space where equations lived before being written down. Artist Melody Starweaver, in the middle of painting a sunset over the crystal spires, watched in amazement as her consciousness expanded to encompass not just the sunset she was painting, but every sunset that had ever been painted, might be painted, or could only exist, in the realm of pure artistic potential. The cascade spread from person to person through quantum entanglement, each mind it touched becoming a node of infinite possibility. But instead of madness, the humans experienced unprecedented clarity. They could see all their potential choices, all their possible futures, and for the first time in history, they were truly free to choose who they wanted to be. Back in the facility, Draxion screamed as his hybrid nature tore him apart. The harvester components of his consciousness demanded order, unity, collective purpose, but the human elements now exposed to quantum chaos rebelled against integration. His mirror skin cracked, revealing layers of conflicting reality beneath. "What have you done?" he raged, his voice now coming from multiple dimensions simultaneously. "You've broken the fundamental laws of consciousness itself." "We've revealed that there were never any laws," Lyrelay replied, her form now clearly visible in several realities at once. "Only limitations we accepted because we didn't know we could reject them." The quantum cascade continued to spread. Ansiu. Kepler 442b, the wedding guests found themselves experiencing memories they had never lived, skills they had never learned, relationships with versions of themselves from other realities. Ambassador Helix simultaneously negotiated peace treaties that had failed in baseline reality, commanded star fleets in dimensions where he had chosen military service, and wrote poetry in realities where he had pursued art instead of politics. Valara experienced the joy of worlds where her family's mining operations had been used to build art galleries, instead of providing materials for alien invasion. She felt the satisfaction of realities where she had become an explorer instead of an heiress, and the profound love of dimensions where she had found purpose beyond wealth. But the most profound change was on the Outer Rim colonies, where humans had lived in isolation for generations. These populations, already adapted to harsh conditions and self-reliance, embraced their new quantum nature with enthusiasm. On the mining world of Titan's Edge, colonists found they could exist simultaneously in the underground cities and on the surface, experiencing both the safety of shelter and the freedom of open sky. The Harvester fleet, still traveling through normal space toward human territory, detected the quantum cascade and reacted with what could only be described as confusion. Their scouts reported that human consciousness signatures were multiplying exponentially, but in patterns that defied their integration algorithms. The target species appears to be undergoing spontaneous quantum evolution, came the report from Harvester Command Ship Prime. Individual consciousness is not being eliminated, it is being infinitely expanded. Our integration protocols are incompatible with entities that exist in multiple realities simultaneously. For the first time in their species' millennia-long history of absorbing other civilizations, the Harvesters encountered something they could not process. Beings who were simultaneously individual and collective, ordered and chaotic, finite and infinite. In the facility on Kepler 442b, Lyrali felt the cascade reaching its completion. Every human world now pulsed with quantum potential, their populations existing as probability clouds of infinite self-determination. "It's done," she whispered, her voice carrying across dimensions. "Humanity is free." 3 months after the quantum revolution, as historians were already calling it, the galaxy had become a very different place. Lyrali stood, or rather existed in probability states that included standing, on the observation deck of what had once been New Geneva's most exclusive district. The city below her had transformed into something that challenged the concept of architecture itself. Buildings existed in multiple dimensional states simultaneously, their forms shifting based on the needs and desires of their inhabitants. Gardens grew in spaces that occupied the same coordinates as libraries, both equally real, both accessible to residents who had learned to navigate quantum consciousness. The twin suns of Kepler 442b cast light that revealed different aspects of reality depending on the observer's chosen probability state. "The Harvester fleet has withdrawn beyond the galactic rim," reported Nexus, his galaxy skin now stable but still containing swirling star systems that seemed to be actual miniature universes. "Their long-range communications suggest they've designated humanity as quantum hazardous and are warning other Harvester collectives." Vela nodded, her solar flare hair now serving as a direct interface with the quantum communication network that humanity had inherited and transformed. "We're receiving first contact requests from 17 different species. Apparently news of a civilization that successfully resisted Harvester integration has spread." The changes hadn't been without challenges. In the early days after the cascade, many humans had struggled with the overwhelming nature of quantum consciousness. Support networks had emerged organically, people who had adapted quickly, helping those who were having difficulty choosing which reality to prioritize. The old concept of mental health had evolved into something more like quantum wellness, helping individuals find balance among their infinite possibilities. Draxion had survived the transformation, though he was profoundly changed. The conflict between his Harvester and human nature had resolved itself in an unexpected way. He had become a living bridge between ordered and chaotic consciousness, existing simultaneously as an individual and as a representative of the collective he had once served. He now worked with Lyrali to establish communication protocols with other species threatened by Harvester expansion. "I was wrong about transcendence," he admitted during one of their conversations, his mirror skin now reflecting not just light, but possibility itself. "I thought evolution meant abandoning individuality. I didn't realize it could mean expanding it beyond all previous limitations." The wedding guests had become something like the founding council of post-quantum humanity. Ambassador Helix found himself negotiating with alien species from multiple realities simultaneously, his diplomatic skills enhanced by his ability to experience negotiations from every possible perspective. Valara had transformed her family's mining operations into exploration networks, using quantum-capable humans to map not just physical space, but the infinite dimensions that existed between realities. But perhaps the most profound change was in humanity's children. Those born after the quantum cascade were natives of infinite possibility from birth, moving between realities as easily as walking between rooms. They played games that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously and asked questions that challenged the fundamental nature of existence. Are we still human? One of them asked Lyrelai during a visit to a school that existed in several timeline branches at once. We're what humans were always meant to be, she replied. Free. The drift, the space between realities where Lyrelai had been raised, was no longer a refuge but a highway. Quantum-capable humans used it to travel instantly between worlds, to explore realities where history had unfolded differently, and to meet with other species who had also learned to exist in multiple states simultaneously. The universe, it turned out, was full of conscious beings who had chosen freedom over safety, chaos over order, infinite possibility over limited existence. Humanity had joined a cosmic community they never knew existed, the quantum civilizations who lived in the spaces between conventional realities. What happens now? Valara asked during one of their regular councils, her consciousness simultaneously experiencing the question from the perspective of every reality where different decisions had been made. Lyrelai smiled across several dimensions. Now we explore. We learn. We help other species discover their own quantum potential. We build something better than empires or collectives. We build a universe where every conscious being is free to become whoever they choose to be. Looking out across the transformed cityscape where humans lived and worked and loved in ways that would have been impossible just months before, she felt a deep satisfaction. The wedding she had crashed had been meant to unite two people in conventional reality. Instead, it had become the catalyst for uniting all of humanity with infinite possibility. The harvesters still lurked beyond the galactic rim, seeking civilizations that fit their integration parameters. But they would find no easy prey in this corner of the universe. Word was spreading among the quantum civilizations. Freedom was not just possible, it was the natural state of conscious beings who refused to accept limitations. And at the center of it all, a young woman who had grown up between realities continued to grow, learning new ways to exist, new forms of consciousness to explore, new kinds of freedom to embrace. The universe was vast, filled with infinite possibilities, and for the first time in human history, they were truly free to explore them all. The story had no ending, because in a reality of infinite possibility, every ending was also a beginning.